Right, what is going on everyone? Welcome back to the channel on this week's video. Recently, my chest training has gone to a whole new level. I've been hitting all new strength feats. My chest is starting to take on some great development, and what I thought I'd do because of this is take you through a few small tweaks that I've made to my chest training that I believe has really elevated the quality of my training and reaped some great results during my off season. Before we start, this is not going to be the main things. There's going to be some small changes to execution that have really taken my training to the next level, really put more stimulus on the pecs and driven the most growth. So obviously you need to be progressively overloading your lifts, getting stronger every week while still maintaining quality tempo and time under tension, not just rushing through your reps and ego lifting, controlling your reps and using your chest and your pecs to drive the movement to grow your chest. Obviously you want to be doing enough volume, frequency, recovering properly, eating in a calorie surplus. All of those things are very vital to the growth of any muscle, but specifically for chest, there's a few tips in execution, some few techniques that I've adopted that have really driven some more growth and taken my training to the next level. So without further ado, we're going to crack on the video and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so first up we've got a pec fly, and this brings me on to my first tip, which is going to be seat positioning. This may sound stupid or blatantly obvious to some, but what people can tend to do is sit directly back on the machine, which is obviously the common sense thing to do, is sit on the machine properly. But the thing with this, under higher loads and heavier weights, what may happen is you may be pushed forward and your shoulders may come in front of your chest, and therefore the tension may shift from the intended muscle, the pecs, onto your delts, which is not what we want for the purpose of chest growth. So what I have done is I've shifted my bum further forward on the pec deck, which you will see as I change the camera angle onto the following sets, and puff my chest up. This has allowed my chest to remain in front of my delts throughout the entirety of the set. Quick tip for you, what you want to do is try and touch your elbows together at peak contraction. What you don't want to do is your elbows to be bent like this. This is not full range of motion. You're using more range of motion like this than you are like this. So as you come, squeezing the pecs together, really focus on pressing your elbows, trying to touch them together, trying to pop something between your pecs. But that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about seat positioning. So we're sat a little bit further forward on the seat with our chest puffed up, allowing as much force to be generated within the chest, so much stimulus to be put on the chest and tension to be put on the chest to drive the most growth in the pectoral muscles. So as we move into our second exercise, which is a flat dumbbell press, this is going to bring me on to my second tip, which I briefly covered in the first tip. In the chest fly, I talked about elbow positioning and trying to touch them together. This leads me on to my second tip, which is elbow positioning, and to tuck the elbows in closer to your body. What I want you to do is to try this with me quickly. Start with your elbows flared up like this, and then slowly bring your elbow down towards your pec. What you'll feel is the chest start to contract, meaning that more tension is placed on the chest. So what does this mean? When we put load in our hands and perform the chest press movement like this or like this, when the elbows are tucked in, more tension will be put on the chest. So when that load is transferred during a dumbbell press movement, we are therefore maximizing the tension put on the chest and minimizing what is put on the delt, which you'll feel the delt start to contract as your elbow flares up. So elbows tucked, tension on the chest. So you'll see this as I pyramid up in weight for my dumbbell press. My elbows remain tucked, really trying to force as much tension on the pecs as I possibly can. Not only will this put more tension on the pecs, but it will minimize your risk of injury. Having flared out shoulders, it's a compromising position. So not only are you not putting as much tension on the chest as you want to maximize your chest training, when you put weight in this compromisable position, you're less likely to stay tight and stable, which will cause some movement in the shoulder and either some rotator cuff and scapular issues from the movement, or worst case scenario, internal rotation causing a tear in your shoulder. As you can see, I put the 55s up that week. This was a couple of weeks ago. I put the 57s up last week, and next week is the 60s. So that is something exciting that you've got to look forward to. Well, you'll be looking forward to it if you follow me over on my other socials. My Instagram is linked in the description below for you to check that out. It will be up 2 days following the release of this video. So while we're on the topic of maximizing the tension on your chest, this will bring us to tip number 3, which is to really focus on pushing your chest up as you complete each rep. So what you don't want to do when you're training your chest is to keep your chest flat. that. Like I said with the pec deck, puff your chest up to bring it in front of the delt on a pec fly, which will increase the range of motion and the tension placed upon the pec. Similarly, on a pressing movement, when you press, you don't want to just press your arms forward, as you will be pressing with your limbs, so your tricep muscles and your delts, rather than obviously keeping tight like I mentioned in tip 2, puffing your chest up like I mentioned in tip 1, and really pushing your chest forward. Like you can see, I rock a little bit, so I'm not just pushing like this, I'm pushing a bit like this to really push my chest out and put as much tension on the pectoral muscles as possible to drive the most growth as you possibly can and maximize your training. I overshot my top set a bit there and have since switched that exercise out for more of a steeper incline to really focus on my upper chest, which I'll cover in a future video, so check out for that. But as I move on to my fourth exercise, this will bring me on to my fourth and final tip, which is scapular retraction. So what I mean by this is to pin your shoulder blades together. What you also want to do is to drop your traps. So you pin your shoulders back and drop your traps. This will firstly create a more stable core, as well as when you brace, keeping your whole torso tight, allowing for safer training and for tension not to be lost and force not to be lost through a shaky body, as this will not only be less safe to shake through your movement, but as you lose force through shaking your limbs or having a unstable core, you will not be able to put as much tension on the intended muscle and not be able to drive as much load through those intended muscles. Therefore, you're not maximizing your training. But secondly, this links in with tip number 3. Retracting your scapula and dropping your traps will allow that puffing of the chest to be exaggerated, and therefore not only allowing for a tighter core and a safer movement, but also allowing for a greater amount of stress to be put on the pectoral muscles. Especially with a movement like this decline, the last thing you want to do is protract or relax your scapula and hunch forward, as like I said, this will not only be a less safe way to train, but it will also take the tension off the pecs and put it onto the, wait for it, delts and triceps, which is not what we're doing. If we were doing an overall push session, maybe this would be less of an issue, but as we are training to maximize the stress, tension and growth on our chest, our pectoral muscles, we want to minimize as many of these factors as possible to maximize our growth. As you can see, I ended with a brutal drop set. Okay, this is not part of my tips, but this is a little something that my coach has implemented into my training to really focus on driving a thicker chest. See, I spoke at the beginning of the video about controlling the movement and keeping a nice tempo for maximizing growth of any muscle, but what we are doing here is not only having a slow tempo on the eccentric in the lengthening phase of the rep, we're also increasing the time spent in the concentric portion of the rep. So we're taking a nice 3 to 4 second negative and then really trying to do a 3 to 4 second positive. Obviously, as we struggle towards the end of the set, they may change to a 2 second and then drop again as you struggle to get it up and your muscles begin to fail. This is another sort of technique to really focus on using the intended muscle and not letting the contributing muscles, as I mentioned a million times in this video, the delts and the triceps, minimizing their contribution to the pressing movement and really trying to focus on pushing through the movement using solely the chest. Obviously, you can never fully isolate a single muscle, and the contributing muscles are called contributing muscles for a reason, as they contribute to certain and specific movement patterns. But the aim of the game to maximizing growth of a particular muscle is to try and isolate it as much as possible and try and maximize that muscle's contribution to the movement and minimize the contribution of supporting and agonistic muscles. Okay, so that is going to end the video for this week. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you found these tips useful. If you did, be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that notification bell as well so you don't ever miss an upload. I am 24.5 weeks out of my first ever bodybuilding competition. The aim, I think, for now is to do a 20-week prep. So we're 4.5 weeks of a health and maintenance phase before we go into prep. Once prep begins, the uploads are going to come thick and fast. I'm going to plan on doing 2 uploads a week, one being an overall weekly prep vlog, so from 20 weeks out to obviously show day, a wrap up of the week, and then I'm going to also try and do an additional video going through certain things, maybe like this, maybe even things like specific parts of prep or updates to my food, etc. And that may be covered in the main vlog, but I may do dedicated full days of eating as the time draws nearer to the prep. But for now, that is going to end the video. That I'm just letting you know of things to come, things for you to look forward to. Until next week, I am out and I'll catch you all next time.